Well, hi everyone, this is Royce with Viking Wax Press. Today I've got a unique take on helmet ranking videos, and I've done helmet ranking videos before, I've done over 20 different leagues, but today I have my two favorite football historians with me, Randy Snow from the World of Football podcast, and Darin Hayes from Pigskin Dispatch. So they're going to help me with this video because it's got a historic take on some of these helmets that we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be reviewing the Army-Navy matchup. Over the last 11 years, they've had unique helmets each year for the past 11 years. Now, this image that you're seeing here is their traditional look that they wear typically, but during their specific game when they play against each other, they have a very unique look, and they've changed that look every year when they meet for the last 11 years. So we're going to be talking about each one of those helmets, and Randy is going to be reviewing the Army side of it, and Darin is going to be reviewing the Navy side, and I will be then giving my rankings on each one. So let's go ahead and start out with, well, first of all, before I get into that, let me have you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds. Randy, go ahead.
Oh, Randy Snow, the World of Football from Kalamazoo, Michigan. We're recording this in the middle of the night because two of us are on the Eastern time zone, and the other one, can you guess which one, is out on the West Coast. So we had to make an exception for him. So it's nice and early in the afternoon. The sun is probably still up where you are, isn't it, Royce? Yeah. It's been dark here for at least an hour or more. So this it's kind of late for us, but it's all good.
All right. How about you, Darin?
I'm Darin Hayes, Pigskin Dispatch podcast. Really appreciate the invite to be on here. It's quite an honor to be with you guys to talk about such special helmets, and love talking about the football histories. This is really cool. I've never handled and covered this before.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's jump right in and look at the 2015 matchup if we could. So this is what the matchup looked like on the field, and then I'm going to just go ahead and have Randy start on the Army side of it and tell me about a little bit about background on those Army helmets.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. 2015, when they started doing the specific helmets for this game, the Army actually had 17 different helmets that year. The right side was representing one of the 17 different branches that a cadet could enter after graduation. The left side had the uniform number on it. And yeah, to me, it was way too many helmets. I mean, I understand what they wanted to do. They wanted to try and honor many people. They hadn't done this before. Many organizations represented, but boy, that just seems very confusing. But they're all on a black helmet, so it's easy they would know which team they were throwing to. But just 17 different logos seemed like an awful lot to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of different looks there. I found it a little bit interesting to know that each branch, first of all, I didn't know anything about all of the different branches, but there was like a telecommunications branch and a bombardiers branch, or I don't know. I shouldn't even talk because I don't know all the different branches, but there were a lot. So,
well, I wrote down a few of them. There was the armor branch, there was the field artillery branch, the aviation branch, financial management branch, and the infantry branch. It's just a few of them.
Yeah.
Like 5 out of the 17 is what I wrote down.
Yeah. 17 different helmets in all to make up one football team. So that it is very busy. I mean, I can't imagine being the equipment manager for that, trying to figure out who gets what helmet. All right. Well, let me tell you how I ranked them then, if I can. And that was this one to me. I actually enjoyed the helmet overall because it's a clean look that you can see relatively well. As you can see, I gave it a 10 in uniqueness because there's really nothing like that. Legibility and contrast, I gave it a 9. As well as the logo, I do like those unique logos and the fact that they kind of put a almost stamped version look at each one of the different branches on there. I like that. Now, color scheme, I only gave it a 5, and use of space, I only gave it a 5. There isn't a center stripe, and the fact that they only have the number on the other side kind of knocked it down a little bit. Overall, though, this is a good ranking for me. If you know how I rank helmets, A- is really good for me because usually I've got 20% of my helmets are A, 20% are B, 20% C, 20% D, and 20% are F. So if you're up in the A's, you're at the top 20% of my helmets. So, awesome. Well, let's talk about the Navy helmet from that year.
Yeah, if you look at it first look, when I first glanced at it, I thought that Adam and Randy hijacked Navy and put the World of Football emblem on their helmets, on their heads at first. So I got a closer look at it. But basically, Navy took 7 of their more famous vessels and put them each on a helmet. And they had their quarterbacks wear the aircraft carrier, running backs wear the literal combat ship. I don't know if I said that word right. Wide receivers wore the submarine. Linemen had the amphibious assault ship, linebackers a cruiser, defensive backs destroyer, and the special teams had a minesweeper. And these are really cool looking helmets when you get up close here. I think Randy's got some closer looks here when we get it here in a second. But they also had on the back the wording "Damn the torpedoes," and the full statement, the history behind that is "Damn the torpedoes." Lost my neck. Full speed ahead. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's kind of a weird thing to say. Where did that come from? So I sort of dug into the history. And here during the Civil War, the Union Navy was down in the Gulf of Mexico trying to take control. It was near the end of the war. And they were, the Admiral David Farragut, I believe his name is said, he was going into he saw one of his ships, the USS Tecumseh, get sunk and by torpedoes, which torpedoes were called landmines back then. They weren't what we know of torpedoes in the 2 great wars and on. So they were landmines. And he said, you know what, screw the landmines. Let's keep going. And they forged ahead. And that's where the term "damn the torpedoes" came in.
Awesome. That's cool. I love that kind of history. That's perfect. That's why I have you guys on. I knew you would dig up stuff that I wouldn't ever be able to understand or figure out. That's cool. Yeah, well, yes, here's a really good close-up look at it. And this is just one of the 7, but this is another helmet that I gave it A- to. And this one, uniqueness, boy, you can't get any more unique, I think, than these helmets. Just hand-painted each one. Amazing detailed airbrushing, really great artistry. Use of space, I gave it a 9. I don't know how I didn't give it a 10 because it literally takes up the whole helmet. The only thing
those aircraft carriers are big. You need a lot of space to get those on the helmet.
That's true. Those are huge. But legibility and contrast, I gave it a 5, and it's only because once you pull back from it, it gets a little hard to it almost just looks like a gray blob on a blue background a little bit from a distance. Now up close, if I'm giving it a grade on this, as far as contrast and stuff goes, I would grade it higher. But I try to think of me in the nosebleeds. What does this look like? Because that's where I usually sit in football games. So logo though 9 overall, great helmet. I gave it an A-, 48 overall. Okay, well, let's move on to 2016. This is the matchup overall, and they definitely, speaking of contrast, this year they contrasted each other very well. So let's talk about those Army helmets, Randy.
Oh, yes. Let's see. The uniform design pays homage to the World War II era paratroopers. Oops, let's see. Guess I better get my picture up there. Let's see. The helmet design highlights the netting and hand-painted camouflage shapes that helped disrupt the form, along with showcasing an array of authentic era-specific tactical symbols. The 325th Glider Infantry Regiment, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. I don't know why the paratroopers had the netting on their helmets, but that is very common. You see that in all kinds of movies. But they incorporated that into the actual helmet itself, and it's pretty unique.
Yeah, it did give it more of a kind of camouflage look. So if their parachute gets cut up in the tree or something, it probably makes them harder to see with that net on it. Anyway, I really liked that net aspect that they gave to the helmet too. I thought that was kind of cool. So overall, though, I did like the uniqueness of it. I gave it a 7, And legibility and contrast, I gave it an 8 because you can, I mean, black and white, it's pretty clear. You can see that skull and crossbone, and you can pretty easily see the net. But the logo itself, I'm not a fan of, and also use of space. It doesn't. The logo doesn't cover much of the helmet. The netting does, so I ended up kind of balancing out and giving it a 6. Color scheme to me, though, it's a boring black and white, so I only gave it a 2 there. So overall, this one got a D+, a 30. So for me, I'm grading anywhere between a 6 and a 60, and a 30 is literally halfway. So even to me in my rating system, halfway means it gets a D+. So just because of the distribution of the ratings.
Yeah, these Navy helmets, these are a flashback to maybe one of the most famous Army-Navy games ever, the 1963 game that ended up in a 21-15 Navy win. That's the game Roger Staubach, it's Heisman year. So it's really flashing back. They're really going back to the classic look of 63. Has that Navy anchor on one side. The stripe down the middle has some stars on it. And the only modern feature is on the back bumper. It says beat Army. But that 63 game, with that 21-15 win, Army ended the game on the 2-yard line. They ran out the clock unintentionally. A very famous play, probably the biggest mismanagement clock maybe in the history of the game of football. But Navy was very proud of that game, and they displayed it here in this year, 2016.
That's cool. Yeah, now this one, as far as the rankings go, it ended up with a D+ as well. And a part of that, I think, mostly was due to color scheme, because it's just some flat colors. Now, I don't dislike yellow or blue, but especially if you're comparing it to some of these other helmets that we're going to see, this one just fell super flat in comparison. So logo, I gave it a 4. I kind of like that arm, the anchor logo, but it's not spectacular. It's not like those hand-painted ships or some of the other ones that we're going to see. Overall, the great thing about this helmet is the legibility and contrast. It's got great contrast. You can easily see what you're looking at. So I gave it a 30 overall, which ended up being a D+. Okay, so this is a look at the 2017 helmets and uniforms. So the Army side, Randy, what can you tell me about that Army helmet?
Let's see. Army had an all-white uniform commemorating the 10th Mountain Division, formed during World War II. The 10th Mountain Division soldiers operated in blustery winter conditions. To stay in formation, a dark stripe was placed on the back of their uniforms, known as the Follow Me stripe.
Go to that next slide.
Stripe.
I think we can see it if we look at the next slide to
Okay.
show the back of the helmet.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
The Follow Me stripe and a similar stripes on the back of the helmet itself. But yeah, that's what they had on the back of their uniform, so that they'd know, follow that guy.
Yeah. When I first saw this helmet, I thought, boy, that's the most boring helmet I've ever seen. But then once I got kind of looking at the detail, now I didn't understand what the stripe on the back was for until, like you said, I learned that it was just so people could see the guy in front of them. Mm-hmm. The skis on the front are kind of cool with the U.S. emblem right there. But overall, this one ended up getting an F+ because the sides of the helmet are super boring, just all white. So you do feel like you're in a whiteout blizzard in a way. So uniqueness, though, I did give it a 5 just because not very many helmets have just an emblem in the very front and on the back like that. But legibility and contrast, I put it as a 3 because you feel like everything was whited out and like almost redacted. So use of space, I gave it a 2 because they didn't use the sides at all. Color scheme, most of it is white. And then the logo, I did give it a 4. I bumped it up a little bit because I do like the skis. But overall, personal taste, I gave it a 2. This was probably my least favorite of all of the helmets we're going to be ranking today. I do appreciate the history of knowing that why they did the stripe on the back and stuff, though. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. These Navy helmets, we think of Navy being associated with the water. Well, just hold on, my friends, because they go up in the air too, and they have one of the premier demonstration squadrons of all time. The Air Force has the Thunderbirds, the Navy has the Blue Angels, and this year these helmets demonstrated and pictured the Blue Angels squadron on there in their FA-18 Hornets that they've been flying on lately, and they're just a tremendous tribute to a tremendous entertainment value. Now, the Blue Angels have kind of a cool history. Right after World War II in 1946, General Nimitz, pretty famous in the Great War there, he wanted to have Navy to have a little bit more recognition for the air power that they supplied during the war. So he commissioned this special group of talented Air Force or Navy pilots to pilot and create formations, and what a job they did. And eventually they moved from the prop planes into these jets. And if you've ever seen one at an air show, it's something to behold.
It is there, and just the fact that they can stay coordinated at those speeds, it's a miracle, really.
It sure is.
Really cool. Well, this helmet I was impressed by. I gave it an A- overall because it's got a great use of space. They're coming at you from the very back all the way forward, and it's an active logo. I love active logos like that. Color scheme, it's a beautiful color of blue with that yellow kind of streaking through. And then everything about it, the only thing I gave it was a little bit of a drop in legibility and contrast because of the blue on blue factor. But overall, though, I really dig this helmet. I gave it a 45. The gold face mask, too, helps it pop, too. I like that part. Okay, so tell me about this one, Randy.
Oh, this is mine, isn't it? Let's see here.
The
Army wore... I keep getting confused. Yes, this is mine. I'm doing Army. Army wore the Big Red 1 uniforms to honor the 100th anniversary of the Army's 1st Infantry Division, which helped to end World War I. Also featured on the back of the helmet is the United States flag at the time of World War I, which featured only 48 stars, as Alaska and Hawaii had not been added until later.
That's cool. So let me have you keep it on this for just a minute, because when I get to my rankings, I want to be able to talk about what's not on this helmet. And what's not on this helmet is that sleeve emblem of the wolf there that you can see in this slide. For some reason, they chose not to put that on the helmet. And now if you want to go to the rankings, I'll talk about my rankings and why I ranked it the way I did. Okay. So use of space, I gave it a 1, fittingly, because there's only a 1 on the whole thing. So if they would have put the wolf on the either side or something like that, it would have definitely increased the grade on this guy. Overall, I mean, I did give it a 7 in legibility and contrast because that red definitely pops where you can see anything on the helmet. You can see it well. But uniqueness, I didn't score it very high because it's rather bland overall with just a number on the front. So color scheme, I gave it a 3. Red and black aren't bad together, but it's primarily black that you're seeing. The logo, it's just a number. And then personal taste, overall, I gave it a 3. So I think this one might be tied with that other one as far as my least favorite. Now, knowing the history, like Randy talked about, I think is kind of cool once you know why they had that number on the front. I think in hindsight, knowing those things would have helped me grade. But in a way, it helps me if I'm just looking visually at the helmet. What am I seeing? That's why I grade the way I do, because I'm not necessarily considering anything but the design aspect of it. So that's cool history, though. Okay, let's move on to the Navy version of that year.
Yeah, 2018, they chose Bill the Goat, the Navy mascot. And, I put my civilian brain on, and I've always sort of wondered, like, why would Navy associate with a goat? Why wouldn't it be like a whale or a mermaid or something, associated with the sea? I live by a great body of water here by Lake Erie, and I still couldn't figure it out. So this was really fun, and it really is a cool history to peel back the layers of this onion. I guess goats have been associated with seafaring for centuries because goats provided fresh food for sailors, before refrigeration especially. It was usually a female goat. They would be on there. They get milk. They get, whatever. They can make cheese or whatever they wanted to do with it. So the sailors would always have that fresh food. I said, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know that I've ever heard of milk coming from a male goat. It's on here because this is Bill the goat. So I don't know what they were doing on there, but I guess what happened after refrigeration came in the 20th century, Navy liked the symbol of the goat. Female goats have horns, but not as prominent as the male does. Look at those big horns on Bill the goat there in the image. So they wanted something a little bit fiercer for them, and some of the ships were even adopting actual male goats as their emblem. So they put Bill the goat on there. Billy goat is a male goat, and it carried on, and that's carried on as a tradition there for Navy's mascot. They often have live Bill the goats from over the years at their games.
That's pretty cool. Now, I think if I remember right, didn't Army steal their mascot at one point? And
I think that's happened a few times. Not only this, but other college football. I know Bevo's got stolen, and down in Texas, the goats got stolen a few times. I heard.
Yeah. Well, the story that I heard is when Navy was sailing up whatever river it is that goes to West Point for the very first Army-Navy game, they got off and they were walking up this hill to the field, and they found this stray goat, and they took it with them to the game to be a good luck charm to beat Army, which they did that very first year. And that's another story about how the Navy got the goat as their mascot, at least in football anyway.
I love it. Awesome. Well, ranking wise, I gave this one a B. First of all, I'm drawn to that awesome gold face mask, and then how it matches the gold horn of the billy goat, and then the N on the whatever it is he's wearing there. But this one overall, I mean, I gave it a bunch of 6s and a couple 5s. So it's kind of middle of the road, which ends up for me being a B. So actually that's pretty darn good. I didn't dislike anything about this. If you can get everything above a 5 for me, you're doing really well. I guess overall, the couple spots, use of space beyond the sides, I didn't see much of a center stripe that I could see. And I mean, it's a nice, pretty big logo. So, but not all encompassing like some of the other ones we've seen. But a pretty good helmet overall for me, a B. Okay, here are the Army helmets. What can you tell us about these, Randy?
Army helmets are green, and they featured the gold crossed sabers insignia made famous by the 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry Regiment, who wore the mark as a pin on Stetson hats. There were at least 5 different numbers on the helmet, and I don't know what that means. I don't see any numbers. I don't see any numbers on the helmet, but
there's a 9 above the crossed ones, but maybe they had different ones for each division. Maybe
could be, but yeah, the cross sabers. I remember that on a lot of cavalry helmets or Stetson hats or whatever. So I do recognize that.
Yeah, I just think of like Custer's Last Stand, and he had that helmet or hat that kind of had the flap that went up front, and then he had that symbol in the front. So that's what it reminded me of, at least.
And I like the OD green also.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, I think this one, I didn't dislike this one as much as some of the other ones because of that factor. It actually, contrast-wise, contrasts very well. Now, the color scheme, I don't think they quite got the brown Stetson look they were looking for, even though, I mean, it's got a green. I think it almost could have been a little more brown to get the true cavalry look to it. But I do know what you're saying, though, Randy, because it almost is more like an army green to it.
Yeah, olive drab, yep.
Yeah. But personal taste, I give it an 8. Logo, I like that logo a lot. It's really cool with the
cross sabers.
Sheets. Yeah, sabers, yeah. Uniqueness, I don't know why I only gave it a 5. I guess I've seen other sword crossed helmets, but I can't think of any right now. So maybe I scored it too low there. Overall, though, not a bad helmet. A B- for me is pretty darn good. So 36 score, B-.
Yeah, before we get into Navy helmets for 2019, I think those jerseys that they showed, I know it's a show about helmets, but those jerseys are pretty badass with the green up top there, offset by the white. I thought that was a great color scheme, and I really made the helmet look better. Great
Yeah.
jersey.
True.
Yep. The Navy helmets for 2019, they went back, they were honoring their football players, two of them in particular. And in the early 1960s, Navy had two Heisman winners. The first one in 1960 was Joe Bellino, who set like 15 different records for Navy. And you sit there and think about it, when, during World War II, they probably had their biggest display of people in the recruits that they could play for Navy, and they could recruit for everybody, just like Army could, and had some powerhouse teams like Army did. But early 1960s, Bellino wins that, sets some records, wins the Maxwell Award that year too. And then 3 years later, we already talked about, but Roger Staubach, he wins the Maxwell and the Heisman himself. And just some great traditions of some great players for Navy, and they paid tribute to him in 2019.
That's really cool. Now, what year was that Staubach won the Heisman?
63.
63, yeah. Yep.
So what's crazy is NFL drafted him, Cowboys drafted him like that year after that, and then he had to wait until his whole tenure was up. So he didn't get into the NFL until 5 years after he was drafted, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Randy, I think you've got a prop to show us about that very person.
Well, yes. In 62, which was his junior year at the academy, this was the helmet that the Army team wore. And I didn't know about this until several years ago when I found this mini helmet in a shop, and I'm asking the owner about it. He goes, "You don't know about that 62 helmet that Roger Staubach wore?" And there's actually one of these, a full-size one, in the College Football Hall of Fame with a little plaque that tells all about it. But basically, it's got the skull and crossbows on the front, and it's got Chinese lettering on each side. One side says, "Go Army, beat Navy," but I don't know which is which, because I don't read Chinese. But "Go Army, beat Navy," and I saw this on the shelf there, and I said, "Well, I've got to have it." So, yeah, that's in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I think this was kind of the birth of the single helmet for a particular Army Navy game. So I think it all goes back to this one here.
That's awesome. And now it wouldn't surprise me if we see those in one of these matchups of years coming down the road.
Could be.
Cool.
We'll see.
Awesome. Well, this one ended up getting a C-, which is a 31 for me. Overall, pretty middle of the road on the scores, just because the colors to me are pretty drab colors. I only gave it a 4 in color scheme and 4 in a logo, and mainly because that logo is kind of smaller. And then also use of space, I gave it a 6 because they did put some embellishments to make it look worn all around the helmet. But they could have, in my estimation, bumped up that logo size quite a bit. Overall, though, pretty unique helmet, and 5 in personal taste, kind of middle of the road, but I like knowing the history of it and that they were honoring the Heisman guys. Okay, this is the 2020 matchup, Army Navy matchup. So let's talk about the Army helmets first.
Okay, the 2020 Army helmets. The uniform honors the 25th Infantry Division from the Korean War. Their iconic insignia is a lightning bolt over a taro leaf, and I didn't know what a taro leaf was, so I had to look this up. A taro leaf is a food staple of people that live in tropical regions. I guess it grows everywhere, and it's part of their diet, but I had no idea what that was. And let's see. There's a Latin phrase on the back of the helmet. We'll show that picture here in a minute, but it says "Nec aspera terrent," which means in Latin, "frightened by no difficulties." It's the motto of the U.S. Army's 27th Infantry Regiment, famously known as the Wolfhounds. It was adopted in 1922, but officially approved as their official insignia or whatever in 1931. It signifies resilience, courage, and overcoming hardship.
Nice. Oh, there's a
Yeah,
closer
that's
look at it. That's cool.
yep. That's the taro leaf with the lightning bolt on it. And like I
It's
said, I had
not
no
a
idea.
red hot chili pepper like I thought it was.
No.
Okay. So, but if I remember right, I've been to Hawaii a couple times. Taro is what they make the poi out of. The Hawaiians eat a lot of poi, and they
Okay.
kind of make a paste out of it. But they also have taro chips, and anyway, it's kind of tasty. I've had bread made from taro, and it's actually really delicious. So,
I'd never even heard of it until I read this.
yeah, it's good stuff.
And I see it's got a couple of wolf heads on the back of the helmet also.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this one to me, I think the legibility and contrast score bumped it way up because it's so easy to see even from a distance. I give it a 9 there. Now, use of space, they could have even made that chili pepper. I want to call it a chili pepper, but they could have made the taro leaf even bigger to give the use of space score even more, but they aren't worried about what I'm thinking about it. The uniqueness score, I give it a 7. I haven't seen anything quite like that. Color scheme, I kind of like that. It reminds me of watching MASH, kind of, the Korean War era of green that they had, which was almost like darker, more gritty. So I enjoyed that, and it definitely helps contrast those yellow and red colors. So overall, 35 for me, especially when you're looking at all of the other Army helmets, it's a pretty high grade, a B-.
All right. Well, 2020, it was a big anniversary for the Navy. It was the 175th anniversary of the Naval Academy. And, so they honored these helmets. They had a marble design on it, and it had 6 stripes on it. The 6 stripes represent the original 6 frigates of the Navy that were commissioned that first year. The marble really goes to the Naval Academy grounds, where they have some of that blue marble at Bancroft Hall, which is one of the more prominent buildings there, and the crypt of John Paul Jones. And John Paul Jones is a pretty interesting character. He's born in Scotland in the 1740s. He ends up being, a major player in the Revolutionary War for the United States, and has that famous line that says, "I have not yet begun to fight," when he was facing the British ship the Sarapin, who was supposed to dominate John Paul Jones, and the U.S. sailors responded to that and fought very difficultly. But he was not only from Scotland, he's fighting for the U.S. He ends up and goes and is leading some ships in Russia for Catherine the Great. I don't know how that came about, and he ended up dying in Paris in 1792. And they somehow shipped his body all the way back and put it in a crypt at Annapolis there for at the Naval Academy.
Wow, that's awesome stuff. Yeah, I love this look. To me, it just reminds me of the times I've been to Washington, D.C., where everything's marbled, and all of the statues and everything that you see around there. And then specifically, I remember a big almost tapestry when I went to Gettysburg, and there was a photo, or not a photo, but a tapestry of Washington standing in front of a marbled, almost like that same kind of marbled look of the dark blue with the white marbling. So that's what it reminds me of, and I really like the marbling in there. But let me see the slide that has my rankings on there, and I'll kind of go over those.
Sorry, I accidentally deleted it.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So this one, yeah, I think, boy, use of space, it covers the whole shell. It gets a 10. There's not a place where it's not colored. And then the only piece I gave it a little bit of a downgrade was legibility and contrast, just because if you don't know what you're looking at, or you're looking at, you might think lightning strikes or something in the sky. But I think once you know it's marble, it's pretty cool. And then I color scheme, I like it a lot. Give it a 7. Logo, I guess if you can call that a logo, it's pretty cool. So overall, I give this one a 46 and give it an A-. I like it. Okay, so these are the 2021 Army helmets and uniforms. Let's get a little background on these, Randy.
I don't have much of a background on this. Basically, all I found out was that this uniform honors the soldiers of the U.S. Army Special Forces Command. That
Okay.
the camouflage of the helmets is very similar to what everybody, even in the Air Guard, they went to that right after I retired in 2002. They went to more of a desert type of camouflage. When I was in, it was more dark green, light green, and black. And then right after that, with Desert Storm and all that, they went to this grayish color. And even some of the planes got painted gray and had the same kind of real light green and black. So they did away with the dark green and they went with a tan. And that's basically what they did. And that's very, very typical of what the special forces were wearing back in I don't know, the early 2000s, mid 2000s probably.
Yeah, I was going to say it reminds me of the Desert Storm era, that
Yes.
that kind of look. So,
Yep.
cool. Well, I like these helmets overall. I did give them a 4 in legibility and contrast just because I think it does its job well and kind of camouflages itself. So, use of space though, it's a 9 because it covers almost everything there. And color scheme, I do like the look of it. As far as to me, I think when I think of Army, I think camouflage. I think so. I tend to think more green though when I think Army, but I do understand like since the modern era of Army, most of their battles, I guess, have been in the desert. So makes sense that they would go with that Desert Storm look. So uniqueness, I haven't seen any other fully camouflaged helmets like this. So I gave it a 9, and overall A minus.
All right. Well, 2021 Navy featured the Fly Navy, and we talked a little bit earlier about the F-18 Hornets with the Blue Angels. But remember back, and this sort of was a tribute to the early 90s. Remember back in the 90s, you'd have all the fast food restaurants, you get your meal deal. Then they offered a thing, hey, you can supersize it, you get a bigger everything. Well, the Navy decided to do that with the F-18 Hornets. They went to the Super Hornets and bigger plane, and that's what's pictured on this helmet is that the Super Hornet. They also, if you didn't think Super Hornet was a cool name, well, the pilots have named them the Rhinos because of their durability, and they're just a badass plane. And they were originally manufactured by McDonnell Douglas, but currently the manufacturer is Boeing, which I didn't know that they traded off like that, but I guess that's who wins the contract. They build the planes, and pretty cool plane, pretty cool image on these helmets.
Yeah, those are neat. Yeah, and I like the emblem on the other side too they have the airbrushed Hornet, but on the other side, I like that traditional, basically like they had almost on the World War II planes look, which is really cool too. I like that look. So, and that's almost, I tried to grade on both sides of the helmet here, but either way, I like the look. I love the riveted piece on this side of the helmet. It's really cool. So use of space, I gave it a 9 because it covers the whole thing almost. And then legibility and contrast, I think you could see everything really well. Now, uniqueness, I did drop it down to a 5 because there are a couple other helmets that include this same logo. There are the Warbirds in the NAL, I think, and then they have had a couple iterations of their helmet in the past that have used this same logo. Not that Navy didn't use it first, but just the fact that it's not completely unique, I had to drop it a little bit. But overall, personal taste, I love this. I gave it a 9, and the logo is super cool on both sides. So I gave it an A minus overall. Okay, so this is year 2022, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. This honors the 1st Armored Division of World War II, also known as Old Ironsides. That is the Army's oldest and first armored division, formed in 1940 at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Currently stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas, this elite armored unit is known for its decisive role in World War II. And I always thought Old Ironsides was more of a Navy term, but it does. It's also used for this Army unit also.
And if I remember right, it wasn't. I think one of their generals they referred to as Old Ironsides. If I
think so.
remember
Yes.
the story correctly.
Yes.
But I think they used this in the Northern Africa. That logo was used in the Northern Africa when they were. Even though a lot of people don't know that World War II went down into Africa, it did, and so there were a lot of good tank battles and stuff that happened there. And that's when I think this logo, if I remember right, came from that some of those battles, the units that fought in those battles. But overall, not my favorite helmet. It's just kind of a weird spray painted look to it, and then it's got that logo on the side that is, I'm not quite sure exactly what it's meant to do, but other than I know it represents that battalion or whatever it is. But
right, and that's still in use today, that logo.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, as far as I know.
So I think in a way it's unique. It's got a different kind of a spray painted look to it that I don't see often, and maybe there's a reason you don't see it that often. It's kind of muddy in my estimation. Overall, I gave it pretty low scores, almost everything, 4, 3, a 5, and a 6. But color scheme, it's not my favorite, and I think it's not super creative. And I like creative helmets, so it ended up as a D- for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that Army helmet's not so good, but again, another case for the uniform designer. I mean, kudos to them, because that's really a cool uniform with the big letters and the way that's designed. That really makes it for that year. Yeah. But 2022 for Navy, they chose to honor the 54 graduates of the Naval Academy that went into NASA, into the space thing. Now, we're all grew up in the 60s and 70s here on the show. And I mean, what kid didn't want to be an astronaut in the 60s and 70s? I drank so much Tang. I'm surprised I'm still not orange today, because I thought that would help me get on the moon or something. But those guys were badasses, and they honored them here with these helmets here with that NASA logo on one side, a big picture of the astronaut. Sort of looks maybe a little bit too cartoonish, but still pretty cool to see, giving you that evidence of space. But honoring those 54 folks that from the Navy Academy that went into space.
Okay, yeah. I was born 6 minutes after the first man stepped on the moon, so I definitely can connect to that era very well. They almost named me Apollo, so it's pretty cool. Now, the crazy thing is, though, I don't really like the helmet. I love the era, and I love what it stands for. I didn't realize that that's what they were doing. But if you look at part of why I downgraded this in personal taste was the other side of it with that big NASA logo. It just looks like an advertisement for NASA, and it felt like a billboard. So I wasn't a big fan of that part of it. And I do think, for me, on this close-up version, you can see the astronaut pretty well. But if you go back a ways, it gets kind of like a Ghostbusters Michelin Man look. So
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Yeah. So overall, this one ended up not grading that well for me. Although if I had to really redo it again, I think I'd bump it up in personal taste beyond a 2, because I do connect with that era so well. So,
well, I did watch the moon landing. I was 10 years old at the time, so I actually watched it on an old black and white TV, and I've loved the space program ever since. And that particular helmet right there that you're showing with the astronaut, that is, you may not know this, that is Bruce McCandless, the astronaut. And he was the first astronaut to ever fly in space by himself. He had what was called a manned maneuvering unit. So he actually flew away from the shuttle untethered and then flew back to it again to test out the manned maneuvering unit. I have a picture of that in the basement, because I've always been a big fan of the space program, and I have a photo of him floating out in space, not being tethered to anything, and that's exactly what that picture there is. So yeah, a big fan of the space program.
That took some brave guts right there, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of guys have walked in space, but they've all been tethered to whatever craft they were from. This guy got to float free in space, go wherever he wanted to, and then come back. And they used that to gather some satellites to bring them back into the space shuttle bay at different times. So
that's pretty cool.
That's all I know.
Love it. Okay. All right, we are cruising. We're all the way up to, what's this, 2023 now?
2023, yes.
Okay.
Again, I don't have a whole lot for these helmets. They honor soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division from Operation Iraqi Freedom. So that's where you're getting your desert tan colors from that.
Okay. Any significance of the bulldog? I think that's a bulldog on there. Is it a bulldog?
I'm not sure. That was all I really found as far as what was going on with these helmets that year. So,
okay,
if there's units being displayed, I'm sure they were all part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I couldn't tell you what they are right now.
Well, that's cool. And if anybody out there knows, tell us what that means in the comments, because we would love to interact with you guys and have some official. If that's the other thing, I guess I should take a moment here and thank everyone who's ever been in the Army or Navy, because we all appreciate you. And just to say that and get that out of the way, because you're much appreciated. So the helmet, though, I can't say I appreciate it. It's to me the one of my least favorites.
Bazinga.
The logo, it's the worst one for me, because I don't know what that bulldog, it just looks way too cartoony and kind of almost ridiculous, and it's also too small of a logo. The good thing is that black contrasts very well with that light tan color, and that's why it's got a 6 in the contrast. But personal taste, this one was bad. The color scheme is pretty ugly colors for me. And use of space, they could have definitely made that logo bigger. So this one graded pretty poorly for me. I gave it an F+.
All right. Well, 2023, the Navy was saluting their silent service. These are the submarine forces of the Navy, and they sort of had a motto in mind. It was Eclipse Navy. It's sort of that dark colored submarine in the dark, deep waters of the ocean, and it shows a hull of the submarine on the right side. On the other side, it has a picture of the Navy anchor with a submarine pin in it, just to give some more tribute to the submarines. And great fortune. We talked about air, we talked above the water. Well, this is saluting the folks underneath the water, which probably pretty dangerous, maybe the most dangerous job of all the armed services.
Wow, yeah. This one to me is one of the coolest helmets, and they did such a good job at making it look like you're deep underwater. I really appreciate that. Now, the logo itself, I gave a 4. That I'll start with the worst part of it, because if you don't know you're looking at a submarine, it could be a floating hot dog, and who knows. But overall, though, if once you understand that it's a Navy helmet you're looking at, I think you would make the connection pretty quickly. And the color scheme, I love that. Just the dark blue and then the light blue coming through to give it the contrast. And personal taste, 8. Uniqueness is a 9. I've never seen a helmet quite like this. And use of space is a 9 too, because it's got that underwater feel all over it. So A- on this one. This is a great helmet. Okay, so we are at 2024 Army helmets.
Yes, 2024. This commemorates the 101st Airborne Rendezvous and Destiny of Bastogne. Is that how I pronounce it? In the Battle of the Bulge. Now, the Battle of the Bulge took place in December 1944, and it was the last desperate attempt by the Germans to cut through the Allied lines. The battle lasted more than 6 weeks and took many lives on both sides. The card suits were used. I guess they're hard spades, diamonds, and clubs used on the helmets. Identify the paratroopers and glider troops of the 101st Airborne Division during their jumps into Normandy and throughout the European theater.
Okay. So then they have playing cards that they would show that they were from?
I guess each one of those divisions, I guess, had their own logo. One was the diamond, one was the heart. So they were honoring the 4 different divisions, I guess, by putting those card suits on the helmets.
I see. That's cool. Nice.
Looks pretty plain to me, but I don't know. You're the expert, Royce. How do you rate these helmets?
Well, I rate them middle of the road, and here's where they do well: is the contrast is amazing because it's black and white. So it's a 10 there, but color scheme wise, it's a 2 because it's black and white. So it's not that great. Use of space. It's also a tiny little logo. Like, why didn't they make those things bigger so you could see them on the side of the helmet better? So I would definitely downgraded them there. Now, personal taste, I kind of like them because of the simplicity of them in a way. It's kind of a cool look, and the fact that there are 4. I mean, each one is represented by a different card suit. So I kind of like the variety there. Uniqueness is 6. Overall, it's 33 as C for me, so kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, just when you tell yourself you probably never see a heart emblem on a football helmet, well, Army goes and does that. So pretty cool. All right, 2024, the Navy trumped that card design of the Army by bringing out, something that's a really badass symbol for naval history, and that is the Jolly Roger emblem. And skull and crossbones that you see on pirate ships and things like that sort. Well, it's representing probably the most lethal force on the planet here. If you're an enemy of the United States and you see the Striker Squadron 103 coming in at you, you're in big trouble. They are so lethal that they adopted the Jolly Roger skull and crossbones on their jets, as you can see in the background. And that's what it's paying tribute to. We talked about the FA-18 Super Hornets. Well, that's what these folks are flying in right now, and making fear and enemies all over the world. And they are supporting the Carrier Air Wing 7 division of the Navy, doing a great job of keeping us free.
That's really cool. Wow. Love it. Yeah, this one to me was a really cool helmet to review, and I gave it pretty good scores overall. The only thing I knocked it down a little bit on was color scheme because it's primarily black and white, but it has enough going for it that it's not boring by any means. It's got the rivets look to it. It almost also looks to me a little bit like a ship sail, like it would be on a boat that would fly the Jolly Roger in a way. So I kind of like that aspect of it. Use of space, I gave it a 9 because it's got different shapes and things like that tie into the Jolly Roger all over it. And personal taste 7, logo 7, uniqueness 7, and legibility 6. Overall 41 and a B+. It's a great helmet. Okay, so we're finally up to this last season where we had the last Army-Navy game, 2025.
Oh, you want me to talk?
Sure.
Again, I don't have a whole lot for this one. This set of helmets honors the 250th year of the Army in their history. So I guess it's just all. But that's all it says about this year. I couldn't tell you anything more than 250 years of the Army.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty impressive thing in itself. I just wasn't quite sure what the symbol is on the side. But first of all, before I go on to the helmets, that font that they used on the uniform is amazing. I love that.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's very unique. You don't see like ones like that.
yeah, but I love it. It almost feels like a Knights Templar kind of thing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with that.
But overall, this one did not score very well for me. It's better than a lot of the Army helmets, but it didn't quite do it for me because I can't quite tell what that symbol is on the side or what it signifies just at a glance or even looking at it. I do like that it says 1775, so you can get the 220 or 250 year anniversary aspect of it. But I think overall it's unique. Legibility wise, though, I couldn't quite tell what I'm looking at, so I only gave it a 4 there. Use of space, I didn't see a center stripe on it, and it doesn't. They could have made that logo bigger so you could at least get a better look at it. Color scheme wise, it's kind of Raiders colors, silver and black, which is a great combo, but also I don't know, kind of boring in a way on this to me. And then logo and personal taste, I also give it a 5. So it graded a D, which to me is around the middle of the road. But I would have loved to know what more of what I'm looking at with that thing that almost looks like maybe an angel, or I'm not quite sure. So if anybody knows, help us
I'm
out.
wondering if that comes from the Navy or the Army flag, because it's some symbol that symbolizes the Army back in 1775 or whatever.
Ah,
That
okay.
could be it. I'm not sure. I'm an Air Force guy, so I'm just throwing spitballs in the dark here. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Well, let's hope we
it
have
could
some
come.
Army
It
guys in
could
the
come from that.
Army guys who are watching. Let us know what that is, so we can get a better idea of what we're looking at. But overall, I gave this one a D.
All right. Well, we've had some really cool painted helmets coming out, especially in the NFL and the college football. College football started a couple years ago. Illinois celebrated Red Grange game 100 years against Michigan a couple years ago with that painted helmet, the leather texture. I think the Green Bay Packers this past season had their leather helmets for a game that they wore. Well, this isn't a leather helmet. This is celebrating a ship. So this is sort of a wood grain hand painted. Really cool, the nautical flavor of it. That ship is the USS Constitution. And we talked earlier about Army having their old Ironsides. Well, this is old Ironsides, the ship. This thing was, I live in a town where we have a replica built to scale that's functioning of a tall ship, U.S. Brig Niagara from War of 1812. Well, it pales in comparison to the old Ironsides. This ship was commissioned in 1791, and it sailed all around the world, even making going all the way around the world. It lasted till 1891. It got its name for cannonballs bouncing off the oak hull, making it appear like it was iron, which it had no iron in the hull, but there was some copper. So on these helmets, you're seeing that copper color. That's what they're trying to bring out from old Ironsides, made it shine. I guess it was very impressive to look. It probably still is with the replica that they have sailing around today. And a great image of the ship on one side, and some imagery of the ropes going around the mid helmet stripe, and just a lot of really cool features for hand painted helmet. That probably really a joy for collectors that have one of these in their collection.
Yeah, to me,
Royce,
this. Oh, go ahead, Randy.
You had so many pictures of this particular helmet, Royce. You must love this one, and I do think this is one of the coolest ones there. Normally you had 1 or 2 pictures of the helmet. You had 4 pictures of this helmet with multiple pictures within it, but it is a gorgeous helmet.
I couldn't help myself because it is gorgeous. To me, I guess if I had to pick one word to describe it, it feels alive. This has more life to it than any other helmet I've ever seen. So it's just really cool. I like the way that the schematic of the ship that they have on the side there feels like it was torn right out of a ship's sail. And that copper, it even has, like, if you look around that ear hole, it's got the little green look of like aged copper.
The patina.
Yeah. Boy, it just is. Whoever did the hand painting on these is brilliant. So Yeah, and like you said, that center stripe that has the rope, just amazing stuff. So I graded this one. I'm really surprised it didn't get an A+, but the one thing that it did not grade above a 5 was the legibility and contrast. It got a 5 there, but it is a little hard to see, especially on the field if you're up in the stands. But then again, you can kind of see the center stripe and the rope on the center stripe, but the sides of it you can't quite tell. And then on the other side, it's got that lettering. Can't quite see it there, but boy, I would have loved to give this an A+ because it's one of my favorite helmets of all time.
It's hard to find a color that contrasts copper. You know, I think that's one of their problems on it.
True. Yeah, that's a great point. But I can't complain about this helmet at all. It's when you get 4 10s in my grading system, you're doing really well. And this one got 4 of the 6 scores were a 10. So it's epic. Well, that I think wraps it up for us, right?
Yeah, all you've got is your rankings here. But I just want to say, Royce, that when I said I do the Army ones, I didn't know that they were going to be so plain and dull compared to the Navy ones. The Navy ones are awesome. They're beautiful. They're hand painted, or they airbrushed. They put a lot more time into their helmets. Those Navy helmets are gorgeous, and the Army is not quite up to their standards, I would say.
Well, they have the Army drab for a reason. They're kind of drab. So
yep.
I would agree with you, Randy. And I do love the history of both, though. That's what's amazing to me, is that the history behind these helmets make these helmets special. So, yes. But you can see grading-wise, these are the Army helmets here. And overall, they got a couple A- in there, but they also got 3 F+. So they did not grade super well for me, especially when you compare them to the Navy helmets. So let's go and take a look at those. Boy, yeah. So I think the D+ was the lowest it got on these guys. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the A category. So yeah, if you had to compare Navy helmets when they beat Army helmets by quite a
absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, those are some great helmets right there. So, well, hey, you guys, thank you for coming on. I know it's very late your time, and I appreciate you staying up late to do this. This is awesome.
No problem.
Yeah,
I would
thank
like
you.
Yeah, thanks. I would like everybody, if you can, go on to both World of Football and Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channels. Follow them, like their stuff, subscribe to their channels. They do great work, and they are my favorite historians as far as football goes. So appreciate you. Thanks for your time tonight, and love doing this. This is a fun exercise. What did you guys think?
Yeah,
this
tremendous.
Awesome.
Yeah, I loved the whole thing of it. I loved the history of it, talking football, talking some American history, and saluting some folks that are keeping us safe and free.
Amen to that. That's awesome.
Yeah. As a historian, you think you know everything, but you really don't. And I didn't get into this because I know everything, but I want to know everything. And this exercise like this made me look into these Army helmets and the history, and what's that Tamu plant. I had no idea what that was. So I learned a lot by doing this. So Royce, thank you for challenging both of us to do our homework, and we learned something, and we had a good time.
That's
sure
awesome.
Did.
Well, good. Well, thanks, everyone. Take care. I'm Royce with Viking Wax Press. This is Darin with Pigskin Dispatch, and Randy with World of Football. We'll see you on the next Helmet Ranking Show. Take care.